Thanks. And if you lose or break that, what's your backup?
You've got 12-word seed. You got to write down 12 words. Put that in a safe. If you lose this, then you can.
All right, Daniel. Good timing, man. We had some technical difficulties, but we're
new one, let it up.
ready to go again. We just had to wait for you. It was all according to plan. All right, guys.
Remember 12 words.
Let's try this again. All right, folks. I think I got to do the introduction again because people didn't hear it. So anyway, this is the filter number 115.
Oh, Ivana.
We are going to go around the world. All right, we're working.
Hello, Ivana.
All right, we got a little bit of local news to share. We had a Bitcoin 101 this past Saturday where we turned some noobs into the veteran Bitcoiners in 2 hours. Some of them are actually in the room right now, back for more punishment. We are going to go around the world tonight. We're going to go to Greece, to Russia, Venezuela, Japan, Iran, and Ecuador, all in one night.
And Gary's buying the tickets.
All right, so let's kick things off. Let me share the screen here.
Oh,
Looks
Charlie
like-
Shrimp will go to jail.
Looks like we're dealing with criminals tonight, Charlie Shrimp and Julian Assange.
Oh. Wow.
All right, guys, it's Tuesday night, 5 p.m. Well, 5:13 now, thanks to our technical difficulties, but better late than never. Let's see what we got here. All right, so this past Saturday, we had Bitcoin 101. We had about, 10 or 11 new folks join us where we assume they know nothing. And then by the end of the morning, we turned our Bitcoin into a little bit of lunch at Bali Bohemia. It was a good crowd. You know, it's always something different with Bitcoin 101. Never know quite how it's going to go. Willie, you were there. That was good. It's good to have, more than just me talking and answering questions. So, all right. Also in local news, anybody recognize this guy? Our friend Andrea ran into Krista Rose in Bangkok. By the way, we've got friends in different places around Asia. So if you guys, now that you're interested in Bitcoin and maybe traveling around Asia, going on visa runs to Thailand or Singapore, there is meetups that happen in Bangkok and Chiang Mai and down in Sydney and Brisbane. And we keep up with everybody. And in this case, our man Andrea bumped into Krista Rose at a Bangkok Bitcoin meeting. Do you guys recognize this guy, Krista Rose? He is the one half of the irreverent duo that does Bitcoin Uncensored. So there's a lot of Bitcoin shows out there. There's a lot of people like kind of talking about their projects, and they're all very polite and positive, except for these guys. This guy on the left he's like the shock jock of Bitcoin. And he invites people on his show, and then he asks very, very difficult questions. Like if someone can answer those questions, it ends up being a very friendly interview. But if they can't answer the questions, then it turns into a real, sometimes it's a little bit cringeworthy. So anyway, if you've never experienced Bitcoin Unlimited, I suggest you check it out. It's I'm sorry, yeah, that was a big misnomer. Bitcoin Uncensored, not Bitcoin Unlimited. Did I call it Unlimited before too?
No, first time you did it right.
Okay, Bitcoin Uncensored. They both abbreviate BU when they talk about themselves. So anyway, got a little brush with fame in Bangkok. For our man Andrea. This guy is a regular at our meetings here in Bali when he's in town. All right, after tonight's show, we're going to go to the Onion Collective. They've got Taco Tuesdays tonight for Bitcoin. So not only are the tacos like discounted tonight, but if you use Bitcoin, you get another 10% discount. And they're these huge fish tacos. It's the best deal on Tuesday night. We're going to head over there and continue the conversation. Whatever conversations we start here that are too R-rated, X-rated, we continue the conversation over there off of the microphone and maybe even with a beer in our hand. So this is the filter. What do we do at the filter? We talk about Bitcoin, the magic internet money. And this is, for those of you who are new to Bitcoin, this is the first Bitcoin advertisement that somebody made with MS Paint. But I think it still works. I think it still works. That's a wizard, and you can see he's got a Bitcoin magic wand there. And this is the subreddit where it's still a good place to go for Bitcoin information, although Reddit is blocked in Indonesia. But anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Bitcoin tonight. Let's start with the price. What was the price when we had Bitcoin 101 on Sunday? Do you remember?
98, sorry, 98.
Oh, like 998? Was it below 1,000?
998.
Yes, it was.
Oh, really?
So you guys
Something
have
like
good
that.
money karma, you Bitcoin 101ers. We went from 998 to 1,091. And Ruben, you made like 40 cents, you said?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
you're like a millionaire.
Too bad you bought lunch at Bali Bohemia and didn't
that's
hold on to your Bitcoin savings. Anyway, it could have just as easily gone the other way. So I always get nervous when Bitcoin 101ers show up a little later. I don't know if they're up or down. They want to blame me or not. But anyway, we are up. Bitcoin average around the world is over $1,000, almost $1,100. That's over 14 million in rupiah for one Bitcoin. One thing that's interesting, since China changed their rules, the average is now lower than the U.S. dollar index. You can see the U.S. dollar index is $1,096, whereas the global average is $1,091. That used to be reversed when China, until very recently, almost all of the Bitcoin trading volume was happening in China. And lots of it was done on margin and probably not altogether real Bitcoin transactional activity. And the People's Bank of China recently paid a visit to almost all of the exchanges in China and said no more margin trading and no more trading with zero fees. And it pretty much changed the whole landscape.
Gary, can you explain that to me? I don't understand why that wouldn't just get arbitraged out by people who have access to those markets.
Good question. Well, it's an interesting phenomenon, a good question. I think what it represents is the friction moving money in and out of China. Because China's got capital controls. It's not entirely easy for one to create an arbitrage loop in China because you're moving money in and out. And yeah, it's very interesting and remarkable to see the arbitrage opportunities around the world. Right, when India demonetized their two largest notes, there was a 30% arbitrage opportunity in India.
It's got to be an algorithm we can build.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of people have thought about that problem, and it just ends up being the friction of the legacy banking system, like getting in the way, slowing things down, and especially with a volatile currency like Bitcoin, even when you've got 5, 6, 7% arbitrage opportunity, if the volatility is way up and the capital controls are in place, it can persist. Yeah. All right, now, not all of you have been here for the last few weeks, but my man to my left here, Willie Woo, has made a prediction. Right, he has identified this recurring pattern. The what is it called? The moon and three
dead cats and a moon.
Three dead cats and a moon pattern, which has happened 1, 2, 3. This is just the third time we're seeing it?
It's happened heaps of times. That's just the last 2.
It happens at various levels,
it
right?
happens every consolidation.
And we got a little paint by numbers action here, where you guys can actually make money based on Will's predictions, maybe, kind of. Are we at number 4 now?
Yeah, we
hit number 4?
Yeah, because we had that crash when the People's Bank of China.
Okay, so the way it looks is you got a little hump, one dead cat bounce, another dead cat bounce, and so we've had that, and now we should see 5, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to take us back down below 1,000.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know if that's going to happen, because we've got on March 11th, we've got the ETF, so if it's positive, it'll go straight to
Right, complicating factor. So this is technical trading. This is these patterns arise independent of news and whatever else, or the news and the news headlines are a complicating factor in these patterns playing out. And what is it? March 11th, Wall Street may be getting into the Bitcoin game. Right, they may be offering a exchange traded fund. They're going to, the regulators are going to decide if the world is going to have an exchange traded fund for Bitcoin on March 11th. If that happens, then we can expect about $300 million to enter the Bitcoin market.
in the first week.
Yep, this is Bitcoin for your grandma or for your retirement account.
So these ETF funds are basically ready to go, and they're just waiting for the approval, which may or may not happen on the 11th. And if it happens, that means on 12th March they're launching, kind of thing. And then like BlackRock is going to have an ETF, Bitcoin, for example.
BlackRock?
BlackRock is the biggest ETF company in the world.
All right.
Well, there are several that have been going through the regulatory process for years. And I think they've been trying to get an answer, and there's been a non-answer, a non-response, a non-answer. And finally, they've drawn a line in the sand and said, on this date, we're going to give you a go, no-go for the year.
That could be huge, though, right? If they say yes, which we assume, what are your thoughts on it? Any thoughts?
Yeah, the analysts are picking 300 million to go in the first week.
Yeah.
But the market, if you look at the market and run all the fundamental numbers, the market's expecting 500 million to $1 billion going in. And if you
No, but in terms of the decision, do we have any thoughts on that?
it's
30%?
33% positive and 67% negative.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's like the SEC or whoever in the US deciding on that?
Yeah, SEC. And so the market's already pricing this in. It's already above what it should be.
Yeah.
And if it's a negative decision, we can expect like a pullback.
Yeah, well, you'll get your 5.
We'll get the 5.
You'll get your
We'll get the
think
5.
by numbers.
Yeah. But if it doesn't, if it's positive, then it blows. This is no longer
yes.
consolidation.
Yeah.
It just goes straight to, we think 1700 is technically at 1700 and fundamentally at 1700.
How do you, is that by drawing like a line along these top peaks and choosing something out this direction?
Yeah, some technical trader looked at it. 1400 is the next Fibonacci trace, so it's a magic number series. But
So it could overshoot that and settle down
probably
somewhere.
going to blow way past it. But the fundamental number is 1700 for capital injection.
Well, what's interesting is you see that this has happened at several times during the history of Bitcoin, where it's taken a major, oh man, it's not cooperating.
Oh yeah, new all-time high.
Right, like it'll make a jump and then consolidate, and then make a jump and then consolidate, and now we're wondering if there's going to be another exponential jump.
That's actually it. These guys did this analysis, and they looked at all breakings of all-time high in Bitcoin, and it was between 50% and 60 or something. And so that brings us to 1700.
See, this pattern was even happening back when Bitcoin was like $10. You can see it just recurs, and then there's another one, and then another one, and we have yet to see another kind of exponential, testing absolute new highs, and then settling back down above where the old highs were.
What's the highest it's ever been?
Now.
Yeah, it's certainly in terms of market cap right now.
It's about 1150, I think it's all-time high.
So we're 11.
Yep, 1150.
Yeah.
But that was very, very short over
Yeah.
a number of days, and actually right now we've got the highest closing of the week. Like, it's a sustained high.
Yeah.
You can see that price, it's compressing, it's hitting that all-time high ceiling. So that's the resistance. Everyone's saying that's historically the resistance point where I'm going to sell. And it hits that ceiling, bounces below, and every time it's taking a shot at it, it gets rejected. But it's either going to get rejected hard or it's going to smash through it, and then it'll spring for maybe 50%.
Yeah, let's look at this last little bit of time.
See that? The ceiling.
So it's bouncing against this ceiling, and
In true government fashion, there's no way they can half say yes.
They've postponed it enough time. But even if they say no, they're not going to stop. There's two I think ETFs applying, and they'll just keep going. They've been going for 3 years applying for this thing. Lots of money at stake.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the price for the last week. So yeah, you can see that we are under 1,000 for our Bitcoin 101 class, and now obviously word got out that the cool kids are in Bitcoin now. So the price obviously reacting to our Bitcoin 101 session.
It's Ruben buying there. Right?
Yeah, are you driving the price up, Ruben, for all of us?
I got
Come
over
on,
the
man.
fees.
All right. Now it's time for our man Willie Woo. He's going to do a little segment. You ready to go?
Sure.
You want to take the controls? What do you?
Have that little mousey.
Yeah.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Mousey. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. It's a new crowd. Gary talks about this incessantly. We talk about it incessantly. This is the price volatility of Bitcoin, so how much the ups and downs are over a long period, like 2011 down to today. So, and this is a log graph. So this is 100% volatility over 60 days. And now we're down to 6.8%. That means that within a 60-day period, most likely the price is going to stay within 6.8% over 60 days, with about 2/3 probability is the exact number. And so we've been talking about how, like, the life cycle of Bitcoin is in these early stage, it's a speculative commodity. And down here in the blue lines is where this is like the volatility of the euro, US dollar pair. And when we think when this volatility gets down to this sort of 2-3% range, that's when people start to use it as a currency because it's stable enough. Because you don't want to charge your wallet with Bitcoin and spend it, and thinking you'll spend it, and it's just crashed like 100% of its price in that time. So we need a stable currency for it to be used as a real currency. So there's this other thing I did over the last week, and this is tracking Bitcoin velocity. And do you guys know what velocity is, monetary velocity?
The number of times an amount of currency that gets exchanged over a very real time.
Yes.
Or gets exchanged hands during a period of time.
Right.
Yes.
When it contributes to the GDP figures, like gross domestic product, like let's say that you've got an economy with $1 in it, and if I spend it with Ruben's business, the GDP is $1, right? If I only do that one transaction for the year, then our GDP is $1. But then if Ruben then performs a transaction with somebody else, then the GDP is $2. If those two transactions happen within the same year, then your GDP is 2, right? So that's velocity, but GDP is also related to the money supply. So if we double the money supply, and that's also changing hands over time, this is how GDP is calculated, right?
So it's really a measure on how much this money inside an economy is circulating. How quickly is it circulating? So according to what Gary said, this is, I don't know if you guys were at the 101, but we're talking about the quantity theory of money. And this is like, this is a really simple equation. This side is essentially the size of your economy, price and the transaction. So it's the same, all the goods and services inside an economy, right, has got to be paid for by money, right? And this is how much money is paying for this amount of goods and services. And this is M, is how much money supply there is, and V is how much circulation, right? So if you've got $1 in the economy and you circulate it 5 times, then you bought $5 of goods and services inside that economy. And so you can do lots of interesting things with it, but I won't show you that today. I just wanted to introduce velocity, because when we were talking about this looking at this volatility getting down into currency zone, will we use Bitcoin to buy stuff for everyday transactions, for exchange, for foreign sort of purchases, all sorts of stuff? We buy it on the buy stuff on the internet. It relies on this velocity getting down there. And so we've looked at this graph as kind of the canary in the coal mine as to when will Bitcoin become big? When will it be used really as a currency?
When will it be better than the dollar or the New Zealand dollar or the?
Yeah, I mean, like if this gets super stable, it might one day be a viable alternative as a world currency. But right now it's very tiny, it's very volatile. But
do you think that's a reasonable thing to predict, though, if goods aren't priced in Bitcoin?
Yeah,
it's always going to be volatile against something else, right?
I don't think it really matters when you talk about like we use US dollar for world currency, and
yeah, but we don't use US dollar for buying goods on the street in Bali, right?
Exactly, but it's a world currency.
Well, and a lot of people think in terms of dollars, even here in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Well, and the goal really with the volatility figures, we're used to thinking about the Bitcoin price in terms of dollars.
Correct.
But if Bitcoin were to become less volatile than dollars, then it would make more sense to flip it and say.
Except that it's always versus something else, right? You know, just because the rupee is stable, which is not, but in this example, just because it's stable doesn't mean the US dollar is stable. You know, there's always, you've got two currencies at play, so.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, just because the Bitcoin's super stable against something doesn't mean it's stable against something else, right?
Yeah,
well, triangulating dollar.
It's always, you're always measuring, this is measuring against the US dollar, and really, that's really key, right? Because really, you want to be measuring this against a basket of all currencies to really get a solid, because you could be picking up the volatility inside the US dollar.
Exactly.
But once you've got a super stable currency, I'm not an expert, but I think, you know, people might refer to it as a price because it's stable. I think there's a lot of, you know, it's a big discussion, but I'll just introduce this graph. This is this is the velocity. See this top graph here, this top line. This is the velocity of M1 money supply. So this is cash and check, and is it credit card?
Talking about M1?
Yeah, M1.
I think that's just cash and checkbook money, isn't it?
Okay. So this is like the accounts that are used for spending, and the velocity since actually 2008, when we've had that crisis, is doing a nosedive. It used to be quite stable before then. This is more like your savings, cash deposit accounts, mutual funds. This is considered savings accounts. This is M2. That's how, so it's at 2, that means that it circulates twice per year, whereas the check and savings, check and cash accounts are up around the 7 mark. And this little graph here, which is going all over the place, this is Bitcoin. So this is another way we can track the use case of Bitcoin, because if you can imagine if the velocity went up high, then we could tell if the Bitcoin is actually being used for real commerce. And right now we can see it's way low. It's but it's not like down here. It's not down at this level. It's up at the same rate of circulation as investment accounts. And so we're currently in the age of Bitcoin as an investment store of value.
Is that are those blockchain figures, like velocity of blockchain transactions?
Yeah, this is estimated US dollars transacted on the blockchain divided by the market cap.
Okay.
Yeah, divided by the market cap.
And it's behaving. It's right around the level of like something on par with investments or
savings accounts.
Savings accounts. So well, Yeah, and
So a store of value.
hedge funds, cash term deposits.
So when we've been making the case that Bitcoin is a store of value, well, it's performing a function as a store of value, but maybe not quite a currency yet.
Yeah, this
But as
really
a store of value, yes.
this really shows it. And like, I wanted to know what this was. I was like, is that when Silk Road came along? Ping! We're spinning it.
Lots
And
of,
Silk Road was a online drug market.
there was also Satoshi Dice, which was doing a lot of gambling. which
Right.
could have,
Yeah. So it's and also you can pick up halving events here. Like see here, this is Bitcoin, the last block reward halving, right? So the miners got a half, went from 25 to 12.5 Bitcoins every 10 minutes.
So the inflation rate was cut in half.
Yeah, and so all those coins that the miners used to get, they used to sell on the market and they would circulate. And then I was wondering if this drop was due to that. And you should be able to go back to 2012, and there was a drop again in that. And, that was kind of a theory, but I kind of crunched the numbers, and it shouldn't have had that big of impact. But yeah.
So what kind of trend should we see in this graph to get it towards currency? What should it go up and meet that other line, that M1 line?
Yeah. I think it should be somewhere around here, because like it's always going to have this big investment component to it, right? So it would never be considered like cash only, cash account. There's always going to be the big investment holding. So I could imagine it like the distance between these two will determine the proportion of use, really.
As cash or as a savings?
Yeah. I don't think it'll hit this. It might, yeah, it'll be somewhere in between, and that'll be the long-term kind of.
There doesn't seem to be a discernible trend line though on the velocity for Bitcoin. It just seems all over the place, yeah.
Oh, there's a 2.5 year trend here. Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's not like, but if you go way back, so I don't like comparing this early day stuff, because it's a total nascent.
Yeah, it wasn't.
You know, I was
anything back
like,
then.
remember it was like, hey Hal, I'm going to send you 50 Bitcoins to test this network out, sort of thing. And 10,000 Bitcoins were sent for a pizza and stuff like that, you know. So, yeah. But like, yeah, here we go. I'd say end of the Mt. Gox pop and the bottom of that bear market was when we established a real market. This was all bubble crap. And I'd say this is where we've got a big enough market cap that was legitimate. So take it from here, and this is the uptrend.
We need to pick like a 0 day in there where it became a real market, like, you know,
Yeah.
BC
That's
and
a good-
AD kind of situation. Because everything that was happening on the left side of that graph was when Bitcoin was trying to figure out what it was. Like it didn't know, people didn't know what it was. They were testing it, using it. Things showed up like the Silk Road or gambling sites like Satoshi Dice, and but yeah,
This is like the timeline of from here. Earlier was the Wild West days, and this is sort of modern era. Yeah, I'd say.
yeah,
I'd
where
say
there's a
something
discernible
like this.
trend. And
Interesting thing is like I've mapped the growth of Bitcoin, and actually here it is. Watch this. This is sort of jog my memory of this. See these circles? You guys see the circles on this graph? I know there's a lot here. These circles is the volume that's traded in the exchanges for Bitcoin. And so these little pipsqueak, hey, just a few bucks we traded. You know, what's that? That's like 25. The 25. Oh no, it's got
2012.
it's tiny. Just trust me, it's tiny little amount. And then look, we know for a fact that this was a scam. This was a scam, and everyone jumped on. They bought Bitcoin, right? And then like scam number 2, but Willie bought number 2, and everyone can see the market size is increasing. All right, when's the next jump? Yeah, this was the Chinese pyramid scheme. But every time you get this this scammy pump, the market matured and it never went back. And like today, we've got a legitimate $250 million traded on the exchange each day. This is excluding zero fee markets. And so it's funny, It's like these scams are really helping this mature. And they're getting smaller. Like the last scam was here. See how small that is compared to that one, compared to that one. So maybe that's our last. The end.
It is kind of a funny situation to remark that these, Bitcoin probably wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the Silk Road drug market, where we kind of proved that Bitcoin could perform the function of money. But it's like, kind of a sordid past kind of thing. And like Willie mentioned, we got these times when some of the trading volume was fake and they were driving the price up by kind of pumping up the price or manipulating the price. And those are all part of the past of Bitcoin, but it's kind of like gotten us to where we are now, where we can kind of go legit a little bit. And maybe over the last 2 years or so, it's starting to look like a more real thing, that's not subject to that bad behavior like we had before.
Cool. Edmund says velocity seems like a pretty useless variable.
No?
You've got to explain yourself, Edmund.
Well, when I first looked at it, I felt that way too, because I couldn't discern a trend. But when you pointed out that over 2 years, it does look like it's moving in a certain direction.
Yeah,
and it certainly for modern day economics, velocity is something they watch quite closely. I mean, the Federal Reserve is constantly monitoring velocity, and that declining velocity is something that's very worrisome to the Federal Reserve and modern day economists. That's the thing that they're trying to fix by stimulating the economy, trying to get those velocity numbers to go up.
Yeah.
Because the GDP goes up when velocity goes up, and it's been declining, a steady decline since 2008.
The velocity has a very, very important impact on the price of Bitcoin and what it needs compared to the economy it consumes. So, like, if, say, the internet economy is like $25 trillion, and say Bitcoin's only used on the internet to buy stuff, that means, say, the economy of Bitcoin is $25 trillion. Then you look at, how quickly does it circulate? And if circulation is 3, that means the money supply of Bitcoin has to be worth 25 divided by 3. So that'd be like $3 trillion. If the velocity was 2, then it would be worth 12.5 trillion. So like if you measure the velocity and you divide by the economy size, or economy size divided by the velocity, that tells you the market cap essentially of Bitcoin, and tells you what the price valuation of one coin will be. So
he's asking how do you measure transaction volume? I had that question too. It's on the blockchain, yeah.
It's on the blockchain, Edmund. It's an estimated value. Blockchain.info do it because they've got access to wallets and real life movements. So I think they do an estimate based on when you spend money or spend a Bitcoin transaction, there's at least 2 outputs. One is the person you're spending it to, and the other one is the change that goes back to yourself. And the trick is to figure out which one is the change and which one is your spending. If you can figure that out, then you know how much you're spending in US dollars on the blockchain. And that's what they've done. And,
Interesting.
But how do you measure? Well, yeah, I just said that.
Cool. All right, moving on. All right, so we're talking about this every week. I think we need to stay on top of this problem that Bitcoin has. Is everyone in here aware of the problem that Bitcoin has at the moment? Bitcoin is a little bit sick. It's a victim of its own success. When we did Bitcoin 101, some of the people bought Bitcoin at the Bitcoin machine, and it took close to an hour for the little pending sign to go away. this is because Bitcoin is full. It is, like I said, a victim of its own success. It is at capacity, and we are in the midst of trying to fix that problem as a community, right? Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin company. There is no head of Bitcoin. There's no Bitcoin CEO. Bitcoin is like a force of nature. It exists out in the wild, and all these various parties are participating in the Bitcoin system. And when we make a change, we've got to agree on the change. Otherwise, the change doesn't happen, right? So there have been a lot of suggestions on how to fix this problem, but right now there are two competing solutions to fix the problem. One is called SegWit, or that's short for segregated witness, which I won't explain now, but it just suffices to say that's what the Bitcoin core developers think will solve the problem. And there is another faction that has shown up on the scene called Bitcoin Unlimited that has another solution. Basically, what they're both trying to do is have the ability to put more transactions into the next block, right? The next Bitcoin block is always going to be full, and both of those are suggested solutions, but only 24% of the population thinks that segregated witness will work. Only 19% of the population thinks that Bitcoin Unlimited will work. And we need to get up in this range for either solution to make it into practice. So we're nowhere near.
Who would enable it if it's not owned or run by anyone in particular?
That's a good question. You know, Bitcoin software is running on thousands of Bitcoin nodes and on miner machines all around the world. And the definition of Bitcoin or a Bitcoin block is basically whoever's got the most hashing power and creating the next block. If they make a block and a majority of the miners say that we reject that, like let's say that I create a block that's 2 megabytes instead of 1. I've got to convince everybody else that that's a legitimate block. And if they reject that block, then I basically lose the block reward, I lose all the transaction fees, and somebody else finds a block that's acceptable to the whole world, and I just get ignored because I didn't follow the rules. So the tricky part is, how do we create a bunch of rules so that when I follow the new rule, are people going to come with me, or are they going to reject me, right? That's what we have to do. So that's why I say that these solutions have to get up into the 75, 85, 95 range, so that you know that if I create a block, I know 75% of the people are going to go with me, and then maybe one of those people will make a block, and then maybe someone will start building on this chain, this blockchain that has a new rule. That's what needs to happen. Otherwise, things stay the same, and that's also a good thing. I mean, this is part of what Bitcoin is a immutable ledger. We can't change the rules willy-nilly. We have to agree on the new rules. But right now, we are hamstrung because we can't agree. So I feel confident we will, but so far, we haven't.
How long has this issue been going on for? Or the people been voting on it? And
Well, you know,
it's at least
I-
a long time.
I first learned about this
2-3
potential
years.
problem from Will. When you were back here in 2014, you did one of your little segments on how Bitcoin can only handle 7 transactions per second, right?
No, that was Edmund. He said 7, but I worked it out as 3 point something.
Right.
3s.
Well, you're about right. I think this has this graph will show how many transactions per second we're seeing, but there's a hard limit of like 7, but in practice that ends up being like 2 or 3, because some transactions are bigger than others, right? If all of them were the smallest transaction possible, I'd get to 7. But
Crash.
in any case,
that's a demonstration of what it's like using Bitcoin.
well, here's an example of the backlog here. Each block, Bitcoin is a blockchain, right? And all of these transactions, when we go to have fish tacos tonight, and everybody pays for their fish tacos with their Bitcoin wallet, those transactions need to make it into a block, right? And the next block is only going to be 1 megabyte. And right now there are approximately 25 megabytes of a backlog of transactions. So the next 10 minutes, we're going to have a new Bitcoin block, and the miner is going to have to pick the most profitable transactions out of that 25 megabytes, and then make their own block with those transactions. And we've got 25 times the number of the amount of space that we need at this moment in time. Therefore, the price for a Bitcoin transaction, they're suggesting that when we submit a Bitcoin transaction, we attach a fee that is 113 satoshis per byte. Satoshi is the smallest denomination of Bitcoin. So that's quite expensive. That means a very simple transaction is going to end up costing like 20 or 30 or maybe even 40 cents. Right? And so when we have fish tacos tonight, and our fish tacos are $5 and our fee is 40 or 50 cents, you're starting to push the envelope where it's like maybe fish tacos isn't the best thing to be using Bitcoin for. And there's a lot of debate about that, what Bitcoin can be, what Bitcoin should be. A lot of people say Bitcoin doesn't owe us anything. Bitcoin's amazing. So what if you can't buy fish tacos with Bitcoin? I tend to think that we still need to be buying small ticket items with Bitcoin for the sake of adoption and for people to understand the utility of it. But we're just not there yet. And that's why we get together every Tuesday night to discuss these things, talk frankly about the shortcomings of Bitcoin just as much as the cool stuff. All right, let's see.
Did you hear about that Lumino?
Lumino, that rings a bell. What is that?
That should have been the news topic. There's a guy that's Rootstock lead developer.
Oh yeah, but he hasn't published anything yet. He's just like teasing about it.
Yeah, it's under peer review right now.
There's somebody that claims that he can solve this problem, but we haven't seen the actual suggestion. But he's like very smart, very capable.
He reckons
has a good reputation.
8 bytes per transactions.
8 bytes per transaction instead of
onto the Bitcoin blockchain via a soft fork.
And isn't it something like it doesn't require a hard fork or a soft fork?
Yeah, soft fork. You can do it on a soft fork.
Yeah.
100 transactions per second.
Really?
Yeah. It's
well,
quite. Yeah.
He might be the new Bitcoin Jesus if he can deliver that miracle.
Yeah, he's a pretty solid guy.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
Let's see what we get. Cool. All right, let's go around the world, guys. We've been talking a lot about what's going on around the world. Will talks about the technical stuff, and I'm more of a macroeconomics person. And both of these things have an effect on the Bitcoin landscape, Bitcoin adoption, whether or not it makes more sense. I find myself in the very perverted mindset of wishing for bad things to happen because it tends to make it more evident why we need something like Bitcoin when something bad happens. Back in 2013, the thing that really drove the Bitcoin price was a crisis in Cyprus, where people's deposits were confiscated by their bank so that they could recapitalize the bank. They called it a bail-in. And although I don't think Bitcoin saved a lot of people in Cyprus at that moment, there were a lot more Google searches on Bitcoin, right? And there's no such thing as a bail-in if you hold your Bitcoin keys. That doesn't happen, right? So anyway, we go around the world and we pay attention to the news, and we've been talking a lot about Venezuela lately. Is everyone familiar with what's happening in Venezuela? Essentially, Venezuela is experiencing hyperinflation. They are having a problem because they have an oil-based economy, and oil has gone from over $100 per barrel to down around $20 per barrel, and I think it has recovered a little bit and is maybe around $40 a barrel. But when your entire economy relies on oil, and you have a socialist economy where during good times you make a lot of promises to your electorate, and then later can't deliver those things. You have a very unhappy populace, and we've been talking about this every week almost, but this is a new twist. It seems that the average person in Venezuela has lost, how much, 19 pounds? Because of food shortages. Where is it? Data from the latest Venezuela Living Conditions Survey found that 81% of Venezuelan households are now living in poverty. Where's the thing about their weight? Look at this picture of a Venezuelan supermarket. Here we go. Meanwhile, 74.3% of the population has lost an average of 8.7 kilos or 19 pounds. Now, Will made the very unkind observation that these guys don't look like they've lost much weight. But anyway, see how I blamed you for that? Well, I just threw you under the bus.
Do you think that's just a stock photo and it's not really?
Well, I mean, this is what happens in socialist countries when they need to, they line up, right? They queue up for bread and for this and that, and no reason to believe this isn't a real photo. But it's really fascinating what's happening with Bitcoin, because Venezuela, because they have all the oil, they have very cheap electricity. And actually, one of the main expenses, if you want to be a Bitcoin miner or participate in the Bitcoin system, is the electricity that these machines consume when they're trying to find the next block. And so you've got free electricity in Venezuela, so people are smuggling Bitcoin miners into Venezuela, right? They're smuggling these machines into Venezuela, and then they are, basically mining Bitcoins, and you can use Bitcoins to buy things on Amazon. So they're using Amazon to buy food, have it delivered to neighboring Colombia, and then they're smuggling the food in and out of Venezuela. And the authorities in Venezuela are finding these people that are mining Bitcoin and throwing them in jail, stopping them. It's no bueno if you're a Bitcoin miner in Venezuela. But
they're being accused of stealing power from the state.
Right. Even though power is free, subsidized. Free.
But you look at the operations; they're taking a lot of power.
Yeah. Well, it's it's a fascinating story. It's probably more sad than fascinating, though. A lot of people are suffering, and it's bad news. And I don't know. I think that it's nice when you have something like Bitcoin that doesn't require the state's good behavior. That thing that I mentioned in Cyprus, that was a function of the government making bad choices. We've seen similar things in Greece, right, and in Venezuela, and it's nice to have alternatives. It's a bit of a monetary monoculture in every country around the world, and if your country doesn't make the right choices, the population can suffer tremendously, and that's why Bitcoin is interesting.
Is it possible to get the velocity of the currency of Venezuela? Like, can we get an overview fast right now?
I don't know. Where would I look for that? I could do a Google search. Let's see, Bolivar. Currency velocity, is that what you're looking for?
Should be super high in hyperinflation.
Venezuela isn't. Yeah, you'd think it would cease to be a useful metric because the velocity would look like. Yeah, especially if you would expect the velocity to go very high because the money's not holding its value, so you want to spend it before it loses its value. You want to trade it for some real good or service before you lose the currency loses its value.
And this is how the Fed and the others are trying to do it in their currencies.
Right.
Money
yes.
Once the velocity.
This is what they're trying to invoke, right? People trying to get people to spend money.
But like the right side of the equation goes high, yeah. Like the prices go high, so velocity has to go high, or the amount of money has to go. Well,
the velocity, high. Remember, is the amount of times it changes hands.
Yeah, but it was m times v gleich equals p times
right.
something
transactions and the price.
transactions, right.
Right, and prices are going through the roof.
Yeah.
And
So
And,
MOV
and,
has-
and so is money supply if you measure it in those same units.
yeah.
So can we have a look at money supply and velocity then? If it's just if it's accessible in 10 seconds or something.
I don't know. I just did a search, but
Yeah, you have the
I don't know where to look. I mean, it's
the Fed might have it. But yeah.
anyway.
It's-
Well, maybe
it's
you can, if you can find it, maybe you can post it to our Facebook group,
Yeah, I just
and we can discuss it online. Let's see, where are we? Okay, let's move on to Greece, guys. I just mentioned Greece, and we've also been watching Greece. Has Greece hit your radar at all? Have you guys been paying attention to Greece? Basically, Greece went bankrupt in 2010, and they've been getting new credit cards every couple of years to pay off their bankruptcy with new credit cards. Right? It happened in 2012, and it happened again in 2015, and now they are trying to renegotiate yet again. Essentially, the creditors get together. You know, the European Central Bank, the IMF, and the European Union are trying to, well, they call for austerity, meaning you've got to pay your public servants less, you've got to maybe raise the retirement age, you've got to basically ask your population to pay for this, right? Austerity, or raise taxes. And they make these projections that, you know, the economy will recover and growth, you know, a vibrant future Greek economy will be able to pay off these old debts. And basically, this is a mathematical impossibility. Every time they get together and vote on these things, well, the current political party is a socialist party that ran on the promise that they were going to throw out what they call the troika, or basically all the people that have been loaning them this money. And long story short, they acquiesced to their creditors, and you know, basically, even after the population voted to repudiate this debt, basically say we're not paying, the people in power acquiesced and you know, kicked the can down the road, right? But now you've got, you know, originally the IMF was not involved in these loans, and you know, as a function of one of their renegotiations, they added the IMF as one of their creditors, right? And now these things are being renegotiated again, and the IMF has said we need to talk about debt relief. We need to talk about them owing less than what is on the, you know, basically debt relief. You know, you don't owe us this money anymore. And most of the power structure of Europe is centered in Germany, right? And Germany's prosperity makes up the difference when there are problems in places like Greece. And there is an upcoming election in Germany. So it's very difficult for, you know, this perpetual force to meet this immovable object situation in Greece. And they say they have a deal. This is the BBC saying that, oh, well, everything seems to be just fine. But really, well, it remains to be seen. This story is saying that everything is in control, but the details are not known yet. It's something that we're keeping an eye on.
What's your Bitcoin angle on this?
Well, this is also something that raised the profile for Bitcoin, because when Greece had this problem back in 2015, they had capital controls, and all of the banks closed, and people could only get something like 30 euros out of the bank. Yeah, I mean, and they, you know, businesses that had foreign suppliers to pay couldn't pay their suppliers. So it was a real mess. And again, you know, Bitcoin users are not affected.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have to have a Bitcoin economy for these things, for Bitcoin to really matter in this situation.
Yeah, exactly, because the guy buying his whatever from Italy still needs to pay in euros. It doesn't help him to have shitloads of Bitcoin that he can't change.
Right. And you know, they can't even get into Bitcoin once that situation arrives, because they don't have access to their money. So, yeah, it's just, I think if anything, it just elucidates the necessity for something like Bitcoin for some future crisis, and usually has a certain percentage of Bitcoin investors are speculators, and this fuels the speculation when these things happen.
And the appeal of it as a store of money, basically, as a store of wealth.
Yeah.
Do you know much about the French elections?
I know a little bit. I actually pinged one of my French friends about that.
Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about it, or? I don't know
Sure,
anything
sure.
about
Well, the French election is taking place, I think, in the beginning of April. They've got their primaries at the end of April, and then I think early May is the actual election. And the front runner, as far as I can tell, or at least someone that they're giving a shot to win, is a Trump-esque candidate named Le Pen, who is Marine Le Pen, a woman who has a political populist kind of platform similar to Trump and also similar to Brexit, right?
Mm.
And so there is wide speculation that she may win, and she's kind of a far right kind of, I don't know, brash politician that maybe a lot of people don't admit to liking, but maybe they'll vote for because they're frustrated.
Does she want to exit France from the EU?
Well, that's what they say. If she wins, then she will put a referendum up, and perhaps, France could choose to use the Eurozone currency, leave the Eurozone currency, or leave the European Union. Yeah, exciting times.
You're rubbing your hands together.
It's the second biggest economy in Europe, right?
Yeah.
It's big.
I just hope it means that cheese will be less expensive for me personally, because I love cheese. Cheese tastes delicious. All right, let's see. Where else are we going? Oh, China. China. Check this out. We were talking about China and how the People's Bank of China cracked down on the Bitcoin exchanges. In fact, most of the exchanges disallowed their users from withdrawing Bitcoin for a month. And it's really interesting to see the market response.
So what does crackdown mean?
Well, they stopped loaning Bitcoin or allowing margin trading on Bitcoin, and they also stopped zero-fee transactions.
So crackdown just means like slow them down a bit.
Yeah, like
Stop the
showing
Wild
up and
West.
saying,
Okay.
hey, the adults are here. Here's some things that got to change. And what it has done, what this graph is showing is that it has driven some of the Bitcoin trading onto the street, because these are local Bitcoin figures. So local Bitcoins is just a website that will help people arrange to meet and trade Bitcoin in person. Yeah. I mean, they can talk on the phone, and they can, if their banks can transfer money back and forth, they can do it.
Like Uber for Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, it's like, it goes around the system. And, any two people could meet on the street and buy and sell Bitcoin using local Bitcoins.
What's the multiplier there? That's like a 10x, isn't it? It's a 10x.
Yeah,
So
it went
bottom
from
line.
like a normal,
It's 4 million yen or whatever yuan to 40.
yeah, this is like a 5x kind of jump. It'll be interesting to see how that changes over time, if this is just an anomaly or if that's the new,
And what is that?
the new normal.
Is that you saying, is that capital flight? I can't see the Japanese.
Well, I mean,
roads.
I don't think it's capital flight. I think it's just moving the market into a different mechanism. Right. For 40 million.
For investment.
Yeah, for buying and selling, because people can't withdraw their Bitcoin on the normal exchanges.
But they can now.
No, not yet. No, but if they go to a local Bitcoins person, they can just hand them the yuan and get the Bitcoin immediately.
So the Chinese exchanges aren't working, still not working again.
That's right.
All right.
So you can
how is this
So we don't know what
quantified?
happened to the
How do they know that this is moving?
Uh,
It's done by hand.
Because the interface is owned by local Bitcoins, and they publish an API with the trading figures.
Right.
So the exchange, they're allowing yuan withdrawals, just not Bitcoin withdrawals?
That's right.
Okay, so that means that you cannot buy Bitcoins in China through the exchanges. So that is net demand to buy. That's different because you can always sell on the exchanges.
Right. You can sell Bitcoin on the exchange, but presumably they're worth more. They're probably worth more on the street because you can actually so if you had Bitcoin like in your wallet on your phone, it would make more sense to sell it on local Bitcoins than sell it on the exchange. There's probably a huge price difference between local Bitcoins and the exchanges in China right now. Maybe we should take a vacation to China. Could probably get a 20% discount, huh?
It's a good way to get involved too.
Yeah, it's a little bit dicey, right? A little bit dicey. All right. Yeah, I think this is more information from about the price rebounding, even though China has cracked down a little bit on the exchanges and implemented new rules. They've also got a new alliance for regulators. So I think net this should be a good thing for Bitcoin in China. Once all this dies down and the exchanges are able to comply with the regulations set forth by the People's Bank of China, we should see a normalization, and the price has already recovered from this news. You know, like we said, we've got the ETF stuff happening, and we just had Bitcoin 101 and Ubud. So, but the price has rebounded, and
So we should tell the stars that it's February. Advertising looks a bit off.
yeah, right. Maybe they're just making so much money from Bitcoin gambling, they just don't care. All right. I posted this article in the Facebook group. By the way, if anyone here is not in our Facebook group, it's called Bitcoins in Bali. This is where we kind of congregate when we're not together in person. This is a great article about what's happening in Venezuela and Russia in terms of using local Bitcoins to trade Bitcoin, and talks about a little bit about the culture. And I think they even talk about, you know, the safety concerns about doing it face to face. It's a really good article, but in the interest of time, I'll just point you that way as something to take a look at. Also driving the price is Japan. In fact, after the regulations from the PBOC, a brand new nascent Japanese Bitcoin exchange has become the largest Bitcoin exchange in the world. There's this new company called Bitflyer, which has a lot of funding. And also Japan has been very clear and has telegraphed their regulatory environment. In fact, I think on a certain date it will be recognized as currency, as a foreign currency, and spendable as such in Japan. So keep your eye on Japan, the third largest economy in the world, very dovish when it comes to Bitcoin. And that's also responsible for the price recovery after the news from China. All right, here's a macroeconomic thing to pay attention to. Iran to stop using the dollar in response to Trump's Muslim ban. Have you guys seen this headline? Are you aware of this development? Any idea of some other Middle Eastern countries that have decided to buck the petrodollar? Iraq, Libya. There's not a nice track record for countries that have decided to do this, and I think it's worth paying attention to the news vis-a-vis USA and Iran, because this is a big step in a much wider phenomenon that we've been keeping our eye on: the de-dollarization of the world, or the moving away of the world from the petrodollar. China doing big deals for oil in yuan, and the settlement banks and the ability to settle balance of accounts outside of the dollar system means that the global monetary regime is changing, right? And Iran has a lot of oil, and this is they're an OPEC country, and they're bucking the current system. So it's definitely something to pay attention to. Any questions? Or we it looked like things were getting better with Iran. We had a deal with Iran, and we opened up. We removed some of the sanctions, and I actually have some friends in the payment industry that were like, "Hey, let's get into Iran and like set them up with credit cards and start opening up the trade corridors." And now everything seems to be back frozen again, and they're banging the war drums. Lots of craziness going on in the Persian Gulf right now.
I actually don't see how their rejection of paying in US dollars would change it, because it's not like the prices, you know, if we can say we're going to pay in euro or whatever currency, it's still going to be the global prices against the US dollar. So, you know what I mean? So it just means they're going to pay a different price in euro or whatever it is they decide to pay it.
Well,
I mean, it's just, it's symbolic, I guess.
Yeah.
But the demand for dollars would go down. And if everybody did it, the demand for dollars would go down now. So,
It just still seems that it's not like the price is being set in a new currency. He's talking about paying in US dollar, right?
Right.
Isn't it like is petrodollar essentially like used to be you had to buy US dollars to buy oil?
Yeah,
It's inelastic demand, right? You got to buy it.
Okay, yeah. So
And so now America, if you've got that regime, you can like go, all right, I'm going to print the hell out of my currency, export all the inflation to the world, fund war machines, let the world pay for it.
I mean, these guys probably wanted to do this anyway, and it's a good excuse for them to move in that direction.
we've seen headlines like this before for the last couple of decades, right? Like Russia said the same thing for a while. You know, I'm a little bit skeptical that it's going to have any effect.
Well, there's a very interesting phenomenon afoot. China is about to take the United States' place as the largest oil importer.
Okay.
Which means that they've got a better seat at the table with their own currency. Also, the Chinese currency, the yuan, is now a part of the IMF's special drawing rights basket of currencies, which gives them a better standing in the international regime, their currency, for basically settling international trade. So the
US
since
is a net exporter of oil now.
well, they actually just passed a new law that allows us to export oil. We weren't even allowed to export fossil fuels until recently. And
I guess it's probably not oil, but all petrol.
Yeah.
Because they've always been basically natural gas is a bigger export than
Right.
oil.
But this is
So they weren't allowed to do it before.
yeah. This is a new phenomenon.
Or start exporting now, eh? Like
They're net exporter of oil, yeah, in the last 2 years.
Because when you own the petrodollar, when your country owns the petrodollar, why would you export oil when you can just print money to get other people's oil?
yeah, keep your
I mean, it
reserves up.
just doesn't make any sense. And now the world is changing, and we've opened up the legislative environment where we can do this, and it's just a hallmark that things are changing around the world. It's really something to pay attention to, especially because we've got these other examples of other countries that have tried to move in this direction, and that's when the fists come out. All right, Ecuador. What are we going to talk about? Ecuador. Ecuador's also got a presidential runoff. It's kind of a light week for Bitcoin news, and I thought I'd get your opinions on our man Julian Assange, right? He has been in the Ecuadorian embassy in London for something like 700 days, going on 700 days, and now. And one thing that was interesting is he tweeted today. He's like, "Here's the deal. They're having a runoff election, and if Moreno gets into office, they're just going to gag me, and if Lasso gets in, then they're going to arrest me." But I'm just curious what people think about this situation with Julian Assange. Do we need WikiLeaks, or is this guy a criminal and needs to be arrested? What do you think about international asylum seeking? And anyone care to comment?
It's very stupid of Ecuador to get him. They only lose, so it's really stupid.
You think they shouldn't have taken him in the first place? Yeah, it's probably not good for him. Well, but you know, do you remember when the
Was it
Snowden?
Chavez who did it though?
No, Chavez is in Venezuela.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But
So who's the government? Were they leftist government at the time?
in Ecuador,
Yeah, because it's changed since, hasn't it?
I don't know. I don't know all the details. I do know that when Snowden was on the run, they downed the Ecuadorian plane because they thought Snowden was on the Ecuadorian presidential plane, and that was very embarrassing for Ecuador. It was kind of humiliating. So, I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like we need an international system that allows for political asylum, but.
Well, more interestingly, the UK government have just doubled down on any whistleblowers, and they're bringing in a new law that will increase sentences from 2 years to 20 years for whistleblowers.
Against the UK.
Against people like Assange.
But do they name it something else like treason or leaking, or do they actually call it whistleblowers? Because
no, they don't call it whistleblowers.
Right.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's what it is.
Yeah, England's the home of the euphemism, especially politically.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy I know what I know from WikiLeaks.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of people feel differently and think that he put people's lives in danger.
It doesn't need him, is the question.
Well, I don't know. It's I mean, obviously there are other people in the organization, but I remember there was a time when they shut off his internet during the U.S. presidential election, and I was really scratching my head, you know, kind of going through the thought experiment of what if Assange is not around? I think things change. Even if
WikiLeaks started behaving weird.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Right, and then people were, well, I was wondering, you know, if WikiLeaks gets co-opted, people, you know, whistleblowers get afraid to send their stuff to WikiLeaks, especially if Assange just disappears. You know, I wouldn't be trusting, you know, my personal safety to blow the whistle on something if they get to Assange. Right?
How do if I have secret documents, how do I give them to WikiLeaks? Like, do I send an email or encrypted something and then
they've got
staff, or like
why does it
matter if Assange is there?
This is part of why WikiLeaks became such a phenomenon, because they created a system where people could submit things anonymously. And they create all this dummy traffic, and they've got all these, basically a rubric within which someone can submit something, and if it goes perfectly, then WikiLeaks doesn't even know who they are.
Okay.
You know, actually, when Bradley Manning got caught, he didn't get caught from WikiLeaks exposing their sources. He actually told somebody that he shouldn't have, and that's how they discovered him. But yeah, they have this ingenious system for anonymous submissions.
So when you said that it was behaving weirdly when he was away, what do you mean by that?
They were giving strange comments, and they started giving opinions on the U.S. election, and they refused to sign stuff that they published, and so on. I'm not sure if it's still that way, but I presume not, because I haven't heard.
Yes.
It seems dangerous to run something like this with such an egomaniac in charge of it, even though he says he might not be. That is exactly the result. When you see there's a pause, it all goes to shit, or at least it doesn't look like it's functioning as smoothly as it should. Therefore, it implies that he is still running it, and he is to it all.
Yeah, I think it takes a special kind of person. Like, even the people in his organization, I don't think are as crazy as he is.
No.
You know, are willing to do what he's shown to be willing to do. So, organizations around the world, like, you know, there's DC Leaks and Open Leaks and these other organizations that try to do the same thing, and I don't think they've gotten near the quality of material that WikiLeaks has gotten.
So he was an Australian citizen living in the UK that basically realized shit was going wrong, and he went to the Ecuadorian embassy. That's the story.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. I think
wasn't it?
I think they even arrested him, and he was out on bail, and then he went into the embassy and sought asylum.
So we have. There are interviews where I say that I could very well end up in jail. And
I'm sorry.
And so, I mean, you see the Guardian is inviting people to and giving them a channel to send them news and stuff anonymously. So I think there's a trend that leaking is actually kind of acceptable and wanted.
Well,
Even
The
with-
Guardian won it, obviously,
Guardian.
because it makes that better.
Yeah.
well, if you follow journalists on Twitter, a lot of them are posting their public keys for public key encryption. And if you watch the Snowden documentary, like when he first contacted Glenn Ringwald, they had no idea what encryption was. They didn't know how to do it. And now I think it's standard operating procedure. So, yeah, it's a new
It's
world.
hopefully a more inviting environment for this to become a way of challenging, status quo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can see it happening. It's fascinating. The whole journalism itself is just in turmoil. I mean, with all the fake news accusations and, WikiLeaks being, considered a criminal element. And I mean, it's like the whole deal is going through some sort of metamorphosis right now.
And newspapers are dying.
Yeah, the whole economic model has changed the way that we get news and how news is produced, and has forced some of these news outlets to, appeal to the lowest common denominator because they need that in order to get the ad revenue they need, and long-form journalism has faded away.
But post-Trump, they're seeing record numbers. Every newspaper's got record numbers of huge viewership right now.
Yeah, he's good for the ratings.
Very much so. Seriously.
Well, and you've seen a lot of independent news producers arise,
Yeah.
for better or worse. I mean, sometimes I think you're getting good stuff from them, and then other times I think you're just getting, there's a lot of noise, a lot of wacko stuff out there. So I don't know what the real answer is, but all right, I'm going to show you one more thing before we sign out tonight. Anybody recognize this guy by name Charlie Shrem? Since we're talking about the criminals.
He's the mackerel kingpin.
Yeah, check this out.
There are interviews where I say that I could very well end up in jail, and my prophecy came true. I did. I am a pioneer on the forefront of this thing, one of the first 10 people who even knew what Bitcoin was. I'm a capitalist. I want to make money. That's what we did. We just built a company to make us money. I had this Bitcoin celebrity status. I had a party lifestyle. I've also made the mistakes, and I've seen the red flags.
Where's this all means for Bitcoin?
No problem. We are the reasons that Bitcoin is where it is today. And that's something that'll be my legacy. And it's something worth fighting for. My name is Charlie Shrem. I was an early founder and pioneer in the Bitcoin space. And it was a very humbling experience being a multimillionaire to washing dishes for $8 an hour and no tip.
I met Charlie at a Bitcoin conference. He had a very high profile in the community. So as a prosecutor, if you can achieve one conviction that has a huge ripple effect in the community, that is the person you go after.
So this is the front porch and everything. I can't leave here. I can't go past here. If I do, SWAT team will come. Let's go back inside.
Charlie Shrem, he was one of the first entrepreneurs in Bitcoin. He built a real business when a lot of other people were trying to figure out, what can you do with this stuff? And he got in over his head.
This is my beautiful ankle jewelry.
BitInstant was one of the early Bitcoin companies. So it was a way to get Bitcoins and dollars around the world.
30 to 35% of all Bitcoin transactions were going through our system. The ability to do that was amazing.
The tech industry is full of people that want to move fast and break shit. And you can't do that in fintech.
Charlie Shrem, 24 years old, arrested today and charged.
I allowed and enabled a customer of BitInstant to buy Bitcoin when I knew he was going and reselling these Bitcoins on Silk Road.
Silk Road was that infamous black market drug website, often referred to as essentially the eBay for drugs.
I knew it was illegal, but I don't think I cared enough at the time to stop it. In prison, you become a number. So no matter how rich or poor you are on the outside, no matter what you did on the outside, you are in khakis and you are a number. I've had a year to reflect and to take a break, and I am more into Bitcoin and blockchain technologies as I ever was.
Now he's out, and he's paid his debt to society, and he's trying new things.
This is my first public appearance since I've been arrested in January. A very, very tough crowd in there because they're not Bitcoiners, they're bankers. But we're excited to show them the light, to preach the gospel in there. As a software purist, I believe in open source software, and I believe that everyone should see all of the code, and that's exactly what Bitcoin is. The mechanisms surrounding Bitcoin prevent unnecessary hyperinflation and the arbitrary printing of money. So it's a true, pure market, all built on the blockchain. So blockchain technology is not just money. It's a whole new infrastructure. The blockchain is simply a chain of blocks. It's a ledger system where thousands of transactions every second get packaged into a block. But instead of having one company maintain that ledger is actually maintained across everyone's computers in real time. It's decentralized real-time accounting. Bitcoin gives people economic freedom, and that's why it's a super amazing thing.
It has no center of gravity. It has no headquarters. You can't shut it down.
The only way you could is to shut off the internet.
The story that Charlie Shrem is a part of is the decentralization of finance. Charlie was one of the first people to help that along in the most basic of ways, helping people get money from point A to point B without an intermediary.
Right now I'm in New York, and what I'm going to be doing is sitting on a panel with Marco Centauri. It's a crazy time in the blockchain space. 2016, 2017 will be known as some of the formidable years in the Bitcoin and blockchain space. As the months go by since my release from prison, the tech community, not just the Bitcoin community, but the tech community as a whole, have really embraced me back. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. The most supportive community in the whole world is the Bitcoin and blockchain community. I have a much bigger appreciation for the small things. We'll be doing something, and I'll remember like how I couldn't do it before, and I'll be like, like this is freedom, and like we'll always take a toast to freedom. Bitcoin is back with a vengeance, baby.
If you look back at the early days of Bitcoin, and you look at the people who made a lot of money or that made a name for themselves, those are people who were a little bit crazy, and you had to have a little bit of vision. And I think crazy people who have vision that end up being right aren't called crazy people who have vision that ended up being right. They're called visionaries.
All right.
Is that a new doco series?
Yeah, I just discovered that, and I was always kind of curious what happened with Charlie Shrem. He got done for anti-money laundering laws, and basically he knew that some Bitcoin were going to be used for this online drug marketplace. He didn't do it himself, but he facilitated a transaction for somebody else and didn't report it as one needs to do. There's at least in the States, the anti-money laundering regime creates deputies out of everyone who transmits money. And if you see something suspicious, you're supposed to fill out a suspicious activity report. And I think that's what he failed to do. And he went to prison. Meanwhile, banks such as HSBC laundered billions of dollars for Mexican drug cartels, and they just paid a fine and no one actually went to jail. Interesting kind of dual justice that occurs sometimes.
Do you think HSBC paid for that arrest?
Well, the thing is, banks like HSBC actually have a legal defense fund. I mean, these fines that these big banks pay are part of the cost of doing business.
Protection money.
Yeah. Well, and they made a really good but subtle point at the beginning of that. His lawyer made a subtle point that a DA will go after a high-profile target in order to make a name for themselves or have a big bust, and it's easier to arrest Charlie Shrem than some big bank apparatus. So that's the world we live in. But anyway, guys, that's all the time we have. Thank you for coming tonight. And don't forget, we're going to go over to the Onion. It's Taco Tuesday. And don't forget to join our Facebook group where we're having an online conversation. That's the Bitcoins in Bali group. And we will be right back here, same time, same channel. next week, Tuesday night, 5 o'clock. We'll see you then. Thanks, guys.
See.